really excited to speak with you because I've been a fan for a long time, and there are gaps between Dexys records, long gaps sometimes. I'm happy there's a new Dexys record coming out. And the thing is, maybe especially in America, people, know you for one particular song, which we could maybe talk about. But like, I'm aware of the fact that no Dexys album is the same, and that, there's no one brand to Dexys. And certainly I think some people will be surprised by the feminine divine. So I just kind of want to jump into what inspired this record. I know there was like a kind of Eat, Pray, Love Thailand trip that happens that sort of opened your eye. Well, maybe that's a bad reference, but anyway, what inspired this record?
I watched the movie and then I went there, but
probably not.
Yeah. Well, I was just quite sort of down actually after the last Dexys album, 2016, and my mum passed on at the end of that year also. So by 2017, I was just not feeling very positive. You get, when you lose your vitality and you just sort of, you can do stuff, but you don't have any enthusiasm and you don't really know why. I just felt quite weighed down, and I just didn't want to do any music, So I did I started to do some courses here in England, and then one of them kind of led me to Thailand to develop it a bit more. And that was a big factor. And, one of the things that happened along the way is I started to look at women differently as a result of that, going into my body more and getting out of my head. And, that was a bit of a revelation. And then about 2021, we were working. There was we remixed Touré, and it came out I think last year, and we called it Touré as it should have sounded. And while we were doing that, I started to get enthused about that, and I just felt I've got much more vitality now, and I just thought, I actually wouldn't mind doing some music now. So that's how it happened.
I'm curious about your thoughts about women and femininity and the concept of femininity before and now. I obviously did research about that you grew up Catholic, and you grew up in an era where maybe gender roles were more rigid, or what were the kind of shackles of your old thinking that you wanted to throw off, so to speak?
Well, I didn't even know that I had any shackles. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how entrenched they were, really. And I'm really nervous talking about this issue because I do feel it's a kind of a minefield. Do you know what I mean? But I've only got my personal experience. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of, there's a lot of stuff around this at the moment. And, and all I can do is just share my experience, what happened to me. And what did happen to me is I started to realize that I'd never really thought about women, or I didn't realize that I had any shackles until I started to get out of them, really. And and I didn't even, like I've said this before, I did these courses and they were referring to women as, we were doing some body work. I got into some body work and all that stuff, and they were referring to women as goddesses. And they were like, okay, bring the goddess in. I was just thinking, first of all, she's not a goddess. And so I had some resistance to it. That's when I first went there, started doing that. But as I got into it more and worked on my body more, got into my body more, I should say, it just dawned on me what actually they are. And they're actually really powerful. And that I hadn't really thought of it, because I suppose I'd been subconsciously part of this thing of repressing women, really.
Can you elaborate a little? I know, I appreciate you talking about this. I know you're nervous. You don't need to be nervous with me.
No, it's okay.
I'm very curious because how old are you? You're 70?
69, nearly 70.
Sorry, didn't mean to jump the gun. Didn't mean to jump. But you come from, I guess, I don't want to call you a boomer because you're hip and cool, but and there's connotations that come with that word, but you do come from a generation, kind of a transitional generation. You were on MTV and there were lots of cool, fierce women on MTV and stuff, but you came from growing up in, I guess, the 50s and 60s where it was a little different. You've seen a lot of change in your lifetime.
Yeah, but not only that, it's the experiences that I've had have molded that. I had a thing, I won't go into it, but I had a thing with a girlfriend when I was about 21, and I came out of that thinking, you've got to be tough. you got to be really tough. You got to be strong. You can't show any weakness. I don't know when exactly I picked that up, but it was around that time. I probably already had it before that, but now I had it because if you don't be tough, you're going to get screwed over. And that's
Mm.
how I operated for a long time. And obviously it wasn't very positive or healthy. But listen, I want to ask you, it's all in the song, The Feminine Divine.
Hmm.
It's in there. Have you heard the album?
I've had the whole album. In fact, I tried to listen to it this morning, but I've listened to it too many times and I ran out of streams. But I've listened. I'll hit up your publicist for a new stream. But yeah, I've listened to the full on album. I got lots of questions about it for
Oh,
sure.
okay. No, I just wanted to know. That's all. Because it's really makes a big difference. You know, when you know that somebody's into or checked it out, something that you're talking. You know what I mean? It's a big
Oh yeah,
difference.
and also the side. I mean, I guess we don't necessarily have side 1 and 2 anymore. Not everything comes out on vinyl, but what would be considered side 2 of the album is definitely different from, like, the second half of the album goes more into, I don't know, it goes into like a little more sexual stuff and actually a little more electronic stuff as well. Again,
Yeah.
like I was saying at the beginning of this interview, not necessarily someone that a more casual fan of Dexys might expect from the band that did come on Eileen or did Hooray or did Celtic
Right.
Soul Brothers. So I definitely want to get into more of the album in particular, but I do want to ask about, you mentioned your mother passing. Did anything about your mother passing sort of make you want to connect more to the feminine? You know, because for a lot of people growing up, that's their first goddess, is their mother, you know, the
Yeah.
first woman they look up to.
Yeah. I did think of her as a goddess, actually, or something, or a saint, more like, you know, because she was Catholic as well. So, not consciously, it wasn't conscious. You know what I mean? I know that, you know, people like explanations where this led to that, but I can't say. I don't know, you know, I really don't know. But I do know that I just didn't feel very good. And I just realized there's something wrong in my life. And I just started to do this, look at all this stuff and try and improve myself. And as a result of all of that, you know, it led me here.
There's a line, I wrote it down, but forgive me, I don't know exactly what song it was from, but there's a line in one of the songs from the Feminine Divine where you said, I had so much hate in me. You say that in one of the songs.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask you how, you know, making this album and the trip and the coursework and that you did leading up to the album helped you work through that and hopefully get past that a bit or shed that.
Oh, I think a few things have helped me, and it's still a work in progress. Probably still got a bit of hate in me sometimes, but who hasn't? But
Right.
you know, I've definitely, it's not just this album, but I think the album is, you know, it's cathartic. It's cathartic putting it out, recording it and putting it out. What I need to not do is read the social media comments. That's what I need to not do.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you've kind of been on, I mean, I know that you've been on the bad end of some comments before, like when you released My Beauty. I mean, that wasn't social media, that was 1999. Thankfully we didn't have social media then, but you know, you've toyed, I mean, because, you know, I remember like you got a bit of a hard time then for, you know, the way you were presenting yourself with wearing I don't even know if I want to call it drag. It wasn't drag, but just wearing dresses.
No, not drag.
Just wearing what now we would call, you were ahead of your time. Now we would just call gender fluid clothes. We got Harry Styles on the cover of Vogue in a dress.
That's it. I had a male haircut. I had sideboards. So there was not an attempt to be a woman. It wasn't trying to be a woman. It was just wearing a fucking dress. That's it. It's as simple as that.
See, it's interesting though, because I actually remember on MTV, there's always been a lot of scrutiny about how you guys or how Dexys dress, probably because honestly, when I discovered you, which was the 2RA era, you looked so different from what was going on MTV. Everybody else was in like, you know, like Duran Duran, you know, they were in like makeup and suits and you were in you were in denim, you know, you were in dungarees and you were, you know, looking, I always said that Dexys was like the original Mumford and Sons because you were doing music that was kind of different from what was going on. But then I remember on MTV when the next album came out and you were in the suits, that there was like a breaking news bulletin on MTV about it. Like, really? Because you looked so different. So like, you know, changing your appearance and toying with different types of fashion isn't anything new. And I'm just curious about what made you as early as 1999 want to kind of toy with fashion that like I said, now lots, you see Bad Bunny in a dress, you see Harry Styles in a dress, but you even see Kurt Cobain in a dress, but in the 90s, but it wasn't that, you were a bit ahead of your time and you did get a hard time for it. So like, it kind of ties back to the feminine and divine because, the whole idea of what's masculine, what's feminine, what's right for a man to do, what's right for a woman to do. I mean, obviously this is something you've kind of like played with throughout your life a little bit.
Yeah. There was a question in there somewhere, wasn't
There
there, about
was.
how did it happen?
How
How
well
did
in
it
terms
come
of
about in
yeah,
99?
your gender journey in terms of wanting to experiment
Yeah.
with clothing
Yeah.
and presentation. I've seen the most recent video for my submission. You're wearing, lingerie and a wig and some of that.
Yeah. Okay. So 99, my beauty. What happened is, I got clean from cocaine and other drugs in 93.
Mm.
Then I had a couple of years, I did rehabs and all that stuff. I had a couple of years where I didn't know where the hell I was. And then I started to come out of that about late 94, 95. And then I just felt like I was kind of reborn because I just, I'd looked at my past and I don't know, I felt like I had a new lease of life. So I wasn't interested in being Kevin Rowland of Dexys. In fact, when I was in rehab, I hated the fact I had that past because I was in a big rehab with loads of men. And they were, oh, you're the guy from Dexys. And I just, probably because I fucked up so many things, I don't know why. I just didn't want to talk about it. I just wished I was anonymous. I wanted to be the same as them. I didn't want to be different. And, so anyway, when I sort of came out of there and, started to think about things, I wanted to do music in a different way. And at the point at time, I wished I did, not that I wished I never had a past. I was oblivious to my past. I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, we made this records, now we got to follow it. I didn't think like that. It was just like a blank slate. I felt like a new person. And it was just like a first album. And I just thought, well, these are the songs that kind of guided me through. So I've got to do these songs. And then about 95, I think it was summer of 95, just thought, I'm going to paint my toenails and paint my fingernails. That'd be nice. And then I just got some sandals. And I thought, oh, you know what would be good with this? It's like a Roman leather kilt. And I got one of those. And then I just, one night, like I often get inspiration, got off to sleep. I got inspiration for songs. I got inspiration for a dress. I drew it, went to a dressmaker. Hang on, I'll turn that off. And got it made, And yeah, it just was that really. And I think the problems I ran up against is they probably, they were either invested or not invested or whatever in Dexys as they were the first 3 albums in the 80s. I felt that if I'd been a new artist, it might have been easier in a way, I saw myself as a new artist. I didn't see any connection with what I'd done before. But of course, people were like, oh, this is Kevin Rowland from Dexys. And now he's wearing this. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. Were you prepared for, and even now, the kind of, I don't know if I want to call it backlash, but the negative reactions that you may get when you present a certain way, or even do music that doesn't jibe with what people expect from you based on your past or whatever?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for it then, and it's a shame because it overshadowed the music because the music was good. I wasn't prepared for it. I thought it'll probably rattle a few, what do you say? Rustle a few feathers. But I wasn't prepared for the response that it got at all. It was a shock to me and it did affect me. I allowed it to affect me. Now, like I said, I need to stop. I'm going to get off. Facebook's the bloody worst because it's all old guys,
You're so right. You're so right.
They're just, and they just, you know what? I mean, some of them, I don't really use the Dexys. I do operate it occasionally, but I've got access to it. It's the record company are doing it. But when these guys say something negative, what I do now is I like the comment as Dexys,
That's kind of passive aggressive in like the best possible way. It's like a little petty because they see you saw it and that you didn't let it bother you.
No, well, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they think, but I just go, yeah, great. And I'll tell you why. I'll explain more why in a minute. And then one guy wrote back, it's not a compliment. So I liked that as well from Dexys, I just let them know. And well, to be honest, right, look, my job as an artist or whatever you want to call it, artisan or whatever it is is to move forward, you know. And some of those guys, look, I appreciate that they buy the records, and I'm grateful for that. At the same time, some of those old guys, they just want to relive 1981, 82, 80, whatever it is, 85. Okay, but that's not what. But they kind of want to push that on us in some way. That's what they're saying by saying they want it to be like the old stuff. We can't go there, you know. It's like it's no interest to me. So one or two of them, and one or two of them I've met, you know, and they can be a bit rude, and I just think, oh man, you know. And to be quite honest, I've seen one or two that don't. I just think, great, now leave us alone. You know, if you find this offensive, fantastic. See you later.
Absolutely. I'm curious if you don't like to revisit your past so much, which I commend. I like it that you don't live in the past. But what made you want to do the Tu Raye as it should have sounded, which was quite literally revisiting your past?
There's a very good reason. I was never happy with the mixes.
Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
All you can hope for when you finish an album is that when you leave the studio, you get it home, you listen to it, you go, fucking great. That's as good as we can get it. I don't know how to get it any better than that. That'll do. Okay, great. We had that with Searching for the Young Soul Rebels. We had it with Don't Stand Me Down. Had it with My Beauty. Had it with One Day I'm Gonna Soar. Didn't have it with Tu Raye. Eileen was great, and one or two others, but most of the tracks, they weren't mixed properly. You know, and I went back to the record company at the time and said, these are not mixed right. Can we get some more cash to mix them? A bit more studio time. And they went, no, we spent the budget. That's it. It's going out. So that was it. So I was always felt fraudulent promoting it. I always felt bad because it was by far the most successful, but the mixes and the performances were good in the studio. I knew it because I was there. But in the mixes, they put too many effects on them and they mixed it for mono radio.
Is that Clive Langer and Alan Winstonley doing that?
Yeah, it was mostly Alan does the mixing, you know.
Okay.
And, you know, it wasn't right. They had a different approach to us, you know. They were kind of wanting to, I wanted it to be an album that you listen to, like this one from start to finish, you know.
I did.
And it was, right, that's great. But the sounds were a bit too harsh to do that. Some of the sounds needed to soften so that, you know, you could hear the dynamics better. It was too hard. So we've just made it more soulful. Have you heard it?
I haven't heard that the as it should have sounded, but I'm gonna geek out. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna geek out for you just for a moment. I just want to tell you, I have this here. This is the first album I ever bought with my own money. Was this?
Oh. How old were you?
I was 12.
Oh, bless
I
you.
actually bought 3 albums on the same day. I bought that, Rio by Duran Duran, and Lexicon of Love by ABC. Wow. And when I got home, I wasn't sure which one to listen to first. And I listened to yours first because I, at that time, only knew the one song that was on MTV. At that point, MTV was playing the other 2 albums, maybe 2 or 3 singles from those other albums. So I wanted to dive into that. And I don't remember, I mean, I was young, so I didn't know anything about mixes or anything, but I was perfectly happy with it. But yeah, this record it was a landmark record for me. And yeah, not to geek out, but Come On Eileen is tied for my favorite song of all time with More Than This by Roxy Music. Those are my 2 favorite songs.
Oh, that's a great comparison because I'm a mad Roxy Music fan.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah,
more Roxy Music.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely. I could see that. And, you know, they influenced so many, you know, bands of that came
there would
up
have been
in
no
the 80s.
New Romantics if it hadn't been for them. Bowie was influenced by them. Massive. If you listen to Golden Years, he goes, don't let me hear you say life's taking you nowhere. Now, who does that sound like?
It sounds a bit like Brian Ferry to me.
A lot like Brian Ferry.
Yeah, I'm so happy they got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and that Duran Duran inducted them. Actually, that was a nice full circle moment. But yeah, back to you, and I will check out the Tu Raye as it should have sounded. I actually am very curious. I will check it out. But tying that, its main single, Come On Eileen, to sort of what's going on with inspirations and life things you've been going through with the feminine divine, like. You know, I read a quote in one of your interviews where you said you used to have a very Catholic view of sex, and wasn't Come On Eileen kind of inspired by that?
Totally. That's what it's about.
Tell me what, yeah, I mean, obviously I know the lyrics and stuff and the storyline of it, but like, tell me a little bit about the Catholicism in it.
Yeah, it's about, well, I mean, I never had any sexual education, as in none. The school didn't tell me about sex. My parents didn't tell me about sex. So it was a secret. Like, your body gets, you're 13 or 14, your body is starting to explode with these feelings. And it's a secret. So if it's a secret, it must be bad, because you're not supposed to be doing it or thinking about it or feeling like this, So I've grown up with these kind of Irish Catholic girls in my sort of community. And yeah, you're not supposed to touch them, but you want
to. Yeah, because you're human.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't see it as like, now I can say, yeah, because you're human. But then I didn't see it like that. It was like, well, you shouldn't really be having these feelings, but you do. And you want to make it happen. But also you feel terribly guilty because they're Irish Catholic and you shouldn't be touching them.
So there's a lot of shame and, the self-hate thing we were talking about, it factors into all that.
Yeah. So all of that. Yeah. But, something good came out of it.
Yeah. I'm sure you've been asked this before and I feel silly that I don't know this, but was there an actual Eileen?
No, it's a composite.
Okay.
Girls,
I do know the trivia that Siobhan Fahey's sister played Eileen in the video, though. I do know the trivia.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So
she understood all that. She totally understood all that. They're from the same background, Siobhan and Maura.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so the kind of Catholic guilt or shame that you felt surrounding sex, it feels like, I obviously don't hear a lot of that on this record. I mentioned that on side 2 of Feminine Divine, with My Submission, or I'm looking, Dance With Me, Goddess Rules. There's some, I don't know if the word's correct, the term's right, but there's some like BDSM overtones to it, or maybe not like very overtones. It's, not super subtle. And I mean that in a good way.
Okay.
But I'm curious about that. I mean, not only these kind of bold things for to sing about in a song, but also, given the preconceptions people might have about you or Dexys, it's a bold thing to put this into song. I'm very curious about, it's not very Catholic sounding, in a good way. So very curious to hear the whole kind of awakening you've had that's inspired the themes of those kind of themes on this record.
Didn't I talk about, I mean, I'm not saying that the album is 100% autobiographical.
Okay.
But okay, so I guess it came, starting to see women as goddesses and realizing that, you know what, I don't have to be Mr. fucking tough guy, which I talk about in It's All Right, Kevin, and all those songs, and it's all right to be, feminine, and maybe I don't have to be in control. You know what I mean? I don't have to be that. I don't have to be, sex doesn't have to be all about penetration and, all of that stuff. And I just started to learn, not even learn, but just sort of face my own desires of, things that were more subtle. And yeah.
Do you feel that making this, you did use the word cathartic before, but there's a song, obviously there's a single on it called I'm Gonna Get Free. Do you feel, was this a freeing experience making this record?
I think making it was. I do feel a bit raw now, I have to say.
Tell me why.
Well, because like I said, reading comments on social media. I'm going to delete Facebook and Twitter and just keep with Instagram, because they're cool, really, most of them. I don't really get any negative stuff on there. They all seem pretty open-minded. But I know it shouldn't affect me, but it does.
No, it does. I mean, honestly, when I write an article or do an interview, there could be 100 comments on it that's like, great interview, great article. There's one comment that says they didn't like it, or says something about what I look like. I'm too old to have this hair color or something. It ruins my day. 100% ruins my day. I wish it didn't. I wish I could just read the other comments that are like, this was great. But it's human. I don't even know how people like Lady Gaga or, someone who gets millions of comments on everything they post, how they deal with it. It's like, people could be quite mean, but I'm sorry that it affects you that way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just like you. I'm looking at your chalice there. What is it?
It's from the Madonna Inn in Northern California. They sell these, and I have them in various colors. I feel like they
Wow.
add a little visual interest.
Yeah, they certainly do. The Madonna Inn. Is that Madonna as in Madonna?
No, I wish I would go to that inn too. No, it's because I'm a huge Madonna fan, and I
Yeah.
think she'd be a fan of this record actually. But no, it's
That'd be
just like
great.
this wacky hotel in Northern California or mid Central California that has themed rooms like, you know, the jungle room and the Paris room, and it's amazing. If you're ever in California, you should absolutely pay it a visit and stay in one of the. Some of the rooms have waterfalls in them. It's like very
Wow.
camp. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow.
And their
Central
dining room,
California.
it's
Sorry.
in San Luis Obispo, which is like a little kind of halfway between LA and San Francisco.
Oh, that
And
way. Yeah.
and it has a very, very garishly pink dining room, which you might appreciate. I certainly do.
Probably would.
So
I
yeah,
probably would.
you should absolutely go to the Madonna Inn. You would absolutely enjoy it.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to the social media stuff, like I'm sorry that it lets, I mean, obviously this isn't something that, you know, you and I came up with. It's a relatively recent phenomenon, but why does it make you leave you feeling so raw? I know we're supposed to just sort of shrug it off, but
I don't know. Like I say, I don't think it should affect me. I don't want it to affect me. I sort of feel I should rise above it. And a lot of the time I do. Like I said, I think screw them. And if you don't like this stuff, fantastic. Go and follow someone else. We don't want your comments, you know. But it's, I can feel myself just feeling a bit raw and a bit, you know, because I'm putting myself out there on this album. Do you know what I mean? I've served
yeah,
my soul up right, you know, so people can just dissect it. And I mean, it's really stupid because, you know, I'm just the kind of guy, like you said, I remember one bad comment. Like I can quote lines from reviews in my head from the 80s, you know. Like there's
really.
one, yeah. Like there's one that used to haunt me, this review of an album. It was a good album that we did, but this, and then I met that guy about 20 years later. And I just thought, what the hell was I worried about? Why? This ain't even a guy that I would, you know, be that interested in what he's got to say. It was just like, you know, it's just crazy. And it's
Well,
probably true with these guys, you know.
what was it a negative review for 2RA, Don't Stand Me Down?
No,
Oh,
it was actually, it wasn't an album. This was there are ones in the album. There was Dan Slammy Dan get a negative review. And that guy, you know, I did meet him years later and did an interview with him about 5 years ago. But anyway, this was a live review around the Don't Stand Me Down period. And it was quite nasty. I think we upset quite a few people around at the time, you know, journalists. We called them out. Instead of doing interviews in England, we put adverts in their papers and we'd make a few jibes about them as well at the same time, you know. So when the time came, we weren't doing well. There was a few knives ready for us, but there you go. It's like, and yeah, it was just, this was a live review. And then I saw the bloke later. And I thought, my God, what was I so bothered about?
well,
Anyway.
you know, did you ruffle feathers or however you want to put it because of the fact that you didn't stay in a box? I told that kind of silly story about how MTV was up in arms about the fact that you changed your image. You never sounded the same from record to record. You still don't. Like, was that at the core of whatever negative reaction you got, that they wanted 2RA 2, so to speak, or, you know, 2RA part 2?
Definitely some people did. Yeah, definitely some people did. Yeah, I guess so. There was a few things really, but anyway, that's history.
Does it ever bother you that for all the things you've done before and since, that at least I know it's a little different in England, where, like, you know, Searching for the Young Soul Rebels was a very big hit album, but like, and Gina was a big hit song. But here in America, and I imagine other parts of the world, you know, you're mostly known for the 2RA era, and specifically for Come On Eileen, which was like such a massive song here. I'm sure you know that, but I mean, I used to like sit by MTV waiting for the video to come on, and I never had to wait longer than like 15 minutes. It was just on. I'd just be sitting there and like the violin would come on. I'd be like, oh, it's back on. They just, I mean, I think it was actually the #1 single in America in 1983, if I'm not mistaken. I think it
Yeah,
was
for a
yeah.
week.
Oh, no, I actually think it, but I think for the whole year it was one of the top singles of the whole year. I mean, and it's, you know, was very ubiquitous in my life. which is great. You know, all bands want to have an iconic hit like that, but you know, you've done so many other things. Does it bother you to be so identified with one song that you did 40 years ago? I guess it was 41 years ago.
Yeah, it does. When it comes up, when I hear it, or, you know, one hit wonders, we get mentioned in that, which in America, of course, not here, because we
Right,
two number ones here. And the last album was top 10. And One Day I'm Gonna Soar from 2012 was number 13 in the charts. I mean, I know that's not what it was record sales wise, but you know, it's all good. It got great reviews, 5 stars in Mojo. One day I'm gonna soar, you know. So yeah, but it doesn't happen too often. But because I don't live in America, I live here. I didn't actually hear it at all. I was there last year. Yeah,
I just heard it. I just heard it in a dance club 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Everyone got on the floor and danced to it.
Wow. What sort of club? What sort of dance club? What sort of?
It was a club called Club Decades, and it's mostly like an 80s post-punk night. And it was actually Susie Sue night, but they were playing other things, and they played Come On Eileen in the middle of it.
A bit incongruous with Susie Sue, isn't it?
It sort of worked.
Okay,
You know, the DJ did a good job. But yeah,
probably
I mean,
jump out, actually. It would probably really jump out.
it did. I was very excited because I've made it clear I love the song. But it's actually weird to me. This is a weird thing to say, but my first kind of I was, as I mentioned, young, but my first kind of realization about how much radio and MTV could control something is this is so dorky, but I remember after Come Eileen had such a big run on MTV, like I said, it was played constantly. They announced they were going to premiere the Celtic Soul Brothers video at like 7 p.m. on Thursday night or whatever. And I went and, you know, I sat, appointment television, you know, watched it, taped it off the TV. And then I waited for them to play it again. And they didn't, that I saw. And they didn't put it into high rotation radio out here. I live in LA, grew up in LA, wasn't played it. And I kept waiting, and I kept being like, why aren't they playing the next single? You know, when Duran put out, you know, Hungry Like the Wolf, Rio, you know, got played next. You know, why aren't they jumping on board? And it was my first kind of realization about how much that mattered, you know, because I already had the album at that point, so I already knew the song and thought it was a great song. But do you have any concept as to why, and again, I'm speaking from a completely American-centric point of view, about why, you know, there were, I think, at least 2 other very strong three, I would say, strong singles off of this album that could have been a good follow-up hit.
What do you think they are?
Celtic Soul Brothers, Let's Make This Precious, and the Jackie Wilson cover, you know, I would say
yeah.
But definitely Let's Make This Precious and Celtic Soul Brothers were definitely had the same kind of spirit, some kind of tempo, the same kind of like vibe to it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the label in England, Mercury, Universal, didn't actually want to release Eileen. They wanted to release Jackie Wilson Said.
Really?
The UK, yeah. And so it was only when we got the plugger down, the radio plugger, he came down and listened to both. You know, because I was arguing with the A&R man, I wanted Eileen and he wanted Jackie Wilson Said. And the plugger went Eileen, and that's how it got released. But the deal was with the label, he said, okay, it's got to be Jackie Wilson next then. So then we had, you know, it was 4 weeks #1 in the UK. It was the biggest song of the year. So I didn't want to follow it up with a cover version, which is what Jackie Wilson Said is, you know?
Right.
But we'd made a deal with the label, and that's what they said it has to be. So I think the American label said, cover versions don't get played on the radio or something like that. So
although to be fair, I think there's a lot of people, teenagers at that time in America, who would not have known that was a cover. I will admit, when I got the album, I heard that version first because, you know, it would have been a new song to them, but I get the point, you know. Yeah.
So that's what they said. The label didn't want to release a cover. So we went with Celtic Soul Brothers. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how passionate the label were. I mean, it was Mercury at the time. I don't know if you know, but they didn't have a good name. Like Graham Parker wrote a song called Mercury Poisoning about a year ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll check
So
that out.
I think the fact it had already been #1 loads of other places in the world, Eileen had. So they pushed that, but I don't know. I don't know. I think they saw us as a gimmicky thing. You know, the
Yeah.
way we dressed and everything. I don't think they thought we were serious, you know.
Well,
I
I
don't,
mean, sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it.
Well, I was going to say, were you surprised at the huge success that the song and the video had? Because as I was saying earlier, it you didn't look like most of the bands coming out of England at that time in terms of the way the video looked, the way you dressed. It didn't sound like him either. Synthesizers were all over the place, and here you are with banjos and more analog instruments doing this kind of skiffle folky thing for that record. And then on paper it didn't seem like this was what was going to be one of the biggest hits of 82, 83, but it absolutely worked. Were you surprised by that?
Well, we were always trying to look and sound different. We were always looking at new ideas. And all right, we didn't look like Duran Duran. We weren't wearing what they wore. I was wearing what they wore, to be honest, in about 1978, 79. I'm not being funny. That's what I was wearing. And actually some of them were as well, because I was in Birmingham and they used to go to the same club as I went to.
Rum Runner?
Yeah, no, before that, there was one called the Rum. They were like the young kids on the block. That was a whole look. It was Roxy Music inspired all that, really. We were all Roxy and Bowie fans, and we were all wearing like suits, which, and shirts. And I was used to wear jodhpurs and big shirt, big frilly shirt, all that. That's 78, 79. But it was as much thought had gone into it as anybody else, what anybody else was wearing. You know what I mean? It was a lot of thought. It was designed. Was I surprised? I suppose so, because we weren't even thinking about America. When we wrote that, we were on our uppers a bit, and we were in danger of being dropped by the label. Oh. We didn't write it as a thing to try and be successful. We always don't think like that. We always just try and write the best songs we can. But I felt it was really good. I thought, wow, this one is really special. But it was controversial, as I showed it to the band. One of the guys in the band, he didn't like it, and he was very vociferous about that, and it was a lot to do with, like I said, we were on our uppers and people weren't getting paid, and like, here's Kevin with this new wacky song that he's showing at the band, and do you know what I mean? And they were like, I was trying to get him to sing the "Come On Eileen to Lou, but we didn't have the lyrics. I was going, just sing ba 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 da da da. And he was sort of doing it half-heartedly. He was sort of making it clear to the rest of the band that he didn't like it, and he was making a joke of it and all that. And I was going to him, I said, no, it's like a chant, so if you can chant it. And he went, I know what it is, but I don't like it. And I was like, I was always nervous showing my songs to the band, because they're good, hopefully, but the back of your mind, you just never know. There's always that nagging doubt. Maybe this is complete and utter rubbish, or they're going to hate it. And so I snapped, I just went, well, if you don't like it, fuck off. And he did. And then Jim, who had co-wrote that and all the other songs on Touré with me, said, you can't talk to him like that. If he's leaving, I'm leaving. And then Jim left. So the band was kind of in tatters, and Jim came back and did the album on a session basis, and one or two of the others did. But so it wasn't really hopeful. The record company were pissed off with us. The previous couple of singles had been flops. So yeah, I thought it was a great song, but the way things were at the moment, you just didn't know.
Wow. Well, can I ask you about one more, since we're talking about Jackie Wilson said, and one more thing about that era. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite TV shows, if not my absolute favorite TV show, is The Young Ones. And you did, Jackie Wilson said on The Young Ones, they had so many amazing bands on that show, like, The Damned and Madness and Motorhead. Do you have any memories, fond memories of being on The Young Ones doing that song?
Only sort of hanging out with the guys during the breaks, and just having lunch with them and having a good laugh with them. And I remember before the show came out, I don't know why, but we went to the BBC to see a rough of the show. They wanted to show us a rough of the show before we agreed to do it for some reason. We'd probably done it anyway because we knew those guys a little bit, those actors, you know. In fact, a couple of them have supported us on a couple of gigs, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in 81, before the Young Ones. And but anyway, they showed us it and we were like, yeah, this is great, really good. And we liked it. And that's all I remember, really.
No worries. It's iconic. I mean, I used to watch that on MTV as well. And they played it every Sunday night here in America. And I would get very excited to watch
Would they
that
really
show.
play it every Sunday night?
They did, but that was my introduction to another thing, is that British television shows don't last very long. Because I was like, okay, where's season 3? And it never came. And I was like, wait, they made like, what, 10 episodes, 12 episodes, not many episodes. And I was like waiting, but you know, they reran every Sunday night for years on MTV. They played the Young Ones, and I was super into it. Yeah, MTV was pretty hip then. So, you know,
notice, just quickly, if I may, you've got a gold disc behind you.
It's Rio, actually. It's Duran Duran's Rio. So
Why'd you get that?
it's kind of a friend just sort of had it made for me because he knows I'm a
Lovely.
fan. Yeah. I have my various ephemera around here. But yeah, that's like I said, actually, if you could see next to it right there, the framed Rio album, that's the other album because Duran Duran signed it for me. That's the other album I bought the same day as this. So
you still watch them now? Do you still go and see them live now?
I do. Yeah. They've been touring a lot lately. Actually, are you going to tour for Feminine Divine in any way? You're going to come to America?
We most certainly are. We're just finalizing the dates now.
Yay. I assume you're coming to LA.
100%.
Yes. Oh my God. I've never seen you in any configuration of Dexys live. I don't remember if you toured much over the years here. I don't recall you playing here.
Last tour of the US was 1983.
Wow. Where was it in LA? Do you remember?
We did the Greek.
I would have loved to, but I don't know why maybe I was too young. I don't know. But
I really enjoyed playing there.
First concert I actually ever went to was in 84. So there you go. So So it's just a year short.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're playing all theaters because it's a very theatrical performance. So the first half of the show is the Feminine Divine in sequence from start to finish. We're not only performing it, we're performing it dramatically. In other words, we're acting out the songs.
Nice.
Yeah. And we've got a female protagonist who's called Claudia. She's from New York. Actually, she's coming over in a couple of weeks to start rehearsals. And the second half, then there's an intermission. And then the second half of the show is the old stuff.
Wow, that's going to be really exciting. I can't, is there any, since you're talking about theatricality, is there any thoughts do you have about, you know, doing some kind of film version of the Feminine Divine, some kind of like, you know, audio visual component like that?
Oh, you mean
like a long form video, a long form film, or it could be on stage, but just in general, like, you know, a rock movie, rock opera.
Well, we would love to get it filmed. And we talked to a guy the other day in London, but I don't know if he sounds incredibly busy, but he likes the album and he loved the ideas. And his name's Tony Kaye.
I know that name.
He did an amazing American film called American History X.
That guy. Okay, wow. That would be...
What a fucking film. He's an English guy.
I didn't realize that because that's such a quintessentially American tale.
Isn't it? What a brilliant film.
Edward Norton was nominated for an Oscar for that.
Quite rightly. He was brilliant in that.
Yeah, wow.
I haven't watched that for a long time. It's a great film.
Yeah, I haven't either. I saw it in the theater actually when it came out. It was pretty intense. Yeah. Wow, that would be amazing if that happened.
If that happened, we would love to get this filmed. We would really love to get it filmed. Yeah.
Will the live presentation you're talking about in Act 1 of your Feminine Divine tour, like, is there a plot to it? Like, is there acting in it? How are you gonna present yourself? Is it gonna, you know?
The plot is the album.
Okay.
That's the plot.
There's no dialogue or anything other than what's on the album.
A little bit, yeah, on the album. You know, there's some dialogue in between the songs. Like, for example, on the first song, The One That Loves You, I go, I'm talking to the girl. I'm saying, someone comes up to you. He says, "How do you do?" But you can tell from the look in his eye that he's not just a friendly kind. Show that man to me. He's insulted me, and I would like to demonstrate to him Black Irish chivalry. So during that, like, I think Claudia's gonna, be talking, like looking like she's talking to Sean on the stage. And I'm going to go over and go, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then there's going to be a little mock, almost like a bit of a fight between me and Sean. So just stuff like that, And of course, she's playing the goddess. She's playing the goddess. So she's got a really big part.
Is she the woman that was in the My Submission video?
No, she doesn't sing, that girl, sadly.
Oh, okay.
So Claudia will be doing all the female vocal parts and playing the goddess. So some of the time I'm singing to her. I'll be singing to her on the stage, literally, and she's kind of looking at me, judging, is he genuine? Does he mean this submission? Is he, So there you go. That's it.
Do you have any, when you've talked about, Slime's not reacting, Slime's, being raw about the way what you're doing is perceived or reacted to on social media or whatever, this may not, and I'm totally stoked for it, but this may not be the Dexys concert tour that some people might expect. They might get what they expect in Act 2, but Act 1 might throw them for a loop a little bit. Do you have any concerns
Act
about
1
how?
You say?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's not this, basically.
That's more American. I know what you're saying, but that's
I'm
not
American,
really.
yeah.
No, I know you are. Yeah, clearly.
Meaning, I'm kind of asking these questions with that mindset, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, look, here it won't be an issue, but I suppose you're concerned with America because we did an album in 2012 called One Day I'm Gonna Soar.
Mm-hmm.
We acted the whole thing out on stage. That's
okay.
a narrative too. So people know that about us here.
Okay.
And it will be, we're only playing theaters. I made it incredibly clear we're not playing the revival circuit, So, it's Dexys present the feminine divine, a theatrical performance of the feminine divine on stage, live on stage, followed by some Dexys classics, Dexys favorites, or something like that. It says, including lots of songs from Tour because we were going to tour Tour last year, but we had to cancel it because I had a motorbike accident. We had to cancel it. We wanted to tour it because of the new mix,
Mm-hmm.
But so to make up for that in the UK, we're making it clear that we're doing lots of material from Tour and we'll carry that on in the US as well.
It's the best of both worlds. I love theatrical stuff. I love, rock operas, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, all that kind of stuff. So I'm down.
All right.
But I want to ask you about something you said about like the 80s revival circuit, because I think that's interesting because, and no diss to the bands that do those kind of shows. I go to some of them. But yeah, that you easily probably could have gone any band of people together and done, these 80s package tours and probably made, a tidy sum of money doing so. But, I'm curious about, I guess that factors into everything you were saying about not wanting to rely on your past. Is that something that you've been offered before that you've
loads of times, loads of offers? Yeah, I've never done it here, never done it in the States, and I wouldn't do it. Look, if I was completely broke for some reason and I had no life, or and I didn't have enough money to live, or if my daughter didn't have enough money to live or something, I might. I don't think I would, because I'd hate it. I'd hate myself. I wouldn't be able to do it. You
have had some hard times. It seems like you're in a good place now, but you have had some kind of hard times. I don't know if that has anything to do with why there have been some large gaps between Dexys albums in the past.
That's got a lot to do with it. Yeah. But when you're in addiction, really, when I'm in addiction, some people are different. They can work, but I can't. When I was doing a substance, that was all I was interested in, really. That was my obsession. Now Dexys is my obsession. And before that, Dexys was my obsession. But when I was doing cocaine was my obsession,
And you say you've been sober or clean since 93?
Yep, 29 years.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
what, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that made, I don't know how many times you tried to get clean. Some people, it sticks the first time. Sometimes they have to do multiple tries. What made it, like, what's the secret to making that last, sobriety?
Realizing, for me, it was realizing that I am completely screwed unless I do what these people tell me, because I went along to the meetings and didn't do what they told me and just stood there at the back or sat there and thought, I don't like these people. I don't want to be here. Fuck them. And I relapsed, and it was straight back. I thought I'm gonna get the good times again, because I've had a bit of clean time. I thought I'm gonna get the good times like it was at the beginning are coming back, but they didn't. It was right back where I'd left off, misery, despair, paranoia, crazy, thinking the police are coming in the windows, all mad, not being able to speak, just doing it on my own. It was horrible. So, and I couldn't stop. So yeah, I was lucky I got back in, and I thought, okay, this time I'm going to listen to what they say. And then, when I really looked at it, when I did a study of what had happened, I saw that left to my own devices, I'm going to do this again. So I better start doing what these people say, working this program. Oh, you got a cat?
Yep.
Okay.
Pussycat.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you in recovery or anything like that?
No, my sister works in it though. My sister works at a rehab facility for teens, actually, like an inpatient sober house for teens. So yeah, but no, I'm not myself. But I definitely talk to a lot of people that are, because it's not a super uncommon thing in rock and roll for sure. And I'm glad that it worked for you. How many tries did it take of you not listening before? This
I
time
tried
in
on
93.
my own. I tried on my own a lot. I used to go to hypnotists and all that. I went to 2 different hypnotists, and they'd be playing a tape. You will not be interested in cocaine anymore. It is no longer a part of your life. You have moved on. I used to listen to that tape every morning, but it didn't work for me. I joined a religion, which was basically a cult. That didn't work for me either.
Ooh.
And then I just went into the obvious place, meetings and recovery, and I didn't listen to them either. But then, as I said, I relapsed, and then so second try of that way, got it.
Okay, well, 2 times that's a pretty good track record. 2 times that way. I mean, I definitely have talked to people where they had to try more than 2 times to.
Yeah, but I tried lots of other ways before that. So anyway.
So it seems like you're in a really good place now. Absolutely. Do you feel like you have a new lease on life at 69?
I don't know about that. I'm still breathing.
Oh, and making amazing music. I mean, I've kept you so long. I mean, I feel like I should probably let you go. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and
Well, I've
telling
enjoyed
me.
it. You clearly know your subject, and that's really good.